Hey, what is up, everybody? This is your boy AJ Trip, and welcome to the game according to me. This is the podcast version, but I'm also doing a video version so that you guys can see me on YouTube. I've not done a YouTube video in a little bit and had some things going on. I had to move to Chicago, from Chicago to Charlotte, and I may talk about that in another video at another time. There's a lot of things that are going on, and we'll see when it comes to that. But otherwise, I am here, and I'm here to talk about this week in sports. There's a lot of topics to cover, so I think we should just go ahead and get right into it. We can really start off with college football, and hopefully you guys can hear me. I'm going to try to talk later. I don't want to talk too much, talk too high, but because I know you guys probably can know me from like screaming and talking, but it's a little different this time. But it's okay. Um, so yeah, really this past week in college football. Um, the big game was Ohio State and Penn State, and Ohio State seemed to they beat Penn State, and that caused them to seemingly jump into the top spot, which was actually pretty funny. Um, because I'm watching Get Up this morning, and they're talking about that. This seems to be really the fact that if one of these teams lose, right? Because if Georgia loses to LSU, they don't want LSU and Alabama to be 1-4 and face in the first round of the college football playoff. That's what a lot of people were thinking, and I could see why they would think that. Um, yeah, I mean, and really, when it's a lot of things that come down to it that once again they're giving a little bias to the SEC. Utah and Oklahoma, um, they have one loss just like Alabama, but they're sitting on the outside. Those two teams could win their championship game and still be left out. And then you would have, again, two SEC teams in the playoffs, and they're giving Alabama a lot of credit that maybe, you know, they just don't deserve or need it. I know that's what a lot of people think, especially in Big Ten country. A lot of people think that they're, but now Big Ten has a Big Ten will more than likely have a team. And I say more than likely because there's a possibility that if Minnesota and Ohio State continue on and they win, and even if Minnesota beats Ohio State, Minnesota can still jump into the top four by beating Ohio State. It would just be one of those things where LSU would be one, Clemson would be two, Alabama would be three, and then Minnesota would be four. But yeah, but a lot of people in Big Ten country do feel like that. There's so much SEC bias, and they're a great conference, but some of these other teams from these other conferences deserve spots as well. And that's why the biggest thing for this is you have to go ahead and you have to do it. You have to expand the playoffs. They can't expand the playoffs right now because of TV contracts, but they have to. They have to go to 8 or even better, make it 16. They have to do that, but they're not willing to do that. So um, at this point, and understandably so because of TV contracts, but some part of me said maybe they could get around that. Maybe they can't. But this is what the deal was right now. Um, Really, it was a lot of teams' homecomings were yesterday, and not yesterday, but this weekend. Because you had Alabama beating Western Carolina 66-3. You had Auburn beating Samford 52-0. And if you guys don't know how I feel about these, teams playing these, FCS teams for their thing, I hate it. I hate it. It seems like every team does it. Every team, plays an FCS team. And I say this again. If you are in a Power 5 conference, you should not play an FCS team. Ever. Ever. You should never play an FCS team. That would be one of my things. And if I was the NCAA commissioner, that's the first thing I would do. If you are in a Power 5 conference, Big 10, Big 12, Pac 12, the SEC and the ACC, you are not allowed to play an FCS team. You're just not allowed to do it. So schedule somebody else. You know, schedule another conference game or schedule another a team from another conference and in the FBS. But you're not allowed to play in these FCS teams anymore because it's stupid. It really is. So yeah, and then we had Baylor. Baylor beat Texas. Baylor could, I don't know if Baylor could jump. Baylor would need some help to probably get into the college football playoff. They would have to beat Oklahoma in the championship game and probably have a lot of other teams to lose. So Georgia, who's number 4, they slipped by Texas A&M 19-13. The biggest upset of this weekend was Arizona State beating Oregon 31-28. So, and Oregon was a team that was thought of to be in that mix of the playoffs as well because they would, they could, they could probably, make a run into the college football playoffs, but they lost to Arizona State, so that ended their dreams. So, so as we look ahead to this this final weekend, um, in college football, well, for the most part, final weekend. I think it says here's week 14 of 16, so there might be some more. Let's see. But this is really the rivalry weekend. A lot of the big rivalries are happening this weekend. Clemson and South Carolina, Washington State, the Apple Cup. We've got Alabama and Auburn, the Iron Bowl. We've got Notre Dame and Stanford is happening. I forget what trophy they play for. And we got a few others as well. North Carolina State is playing. I think they're playing for. They play for like the Victory Bell or something like that. Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Bedlam is a big one. The two Louisiana schools, Lafayette and Monroe, are playing Florida State. We know what that is. Uh, so yeah, a lot of things going down, and then I guess week 15 would be week 15 would be the championship Saturday, and then week 16 would be Army versus Navy. That's a gadget here, so that's how it would be, and so then let's quickly look at the college football rankings that came out um, last night. And again, we talked about it a little bit. There was a switch at the top last week. It was LSU and Ohio State. They switched those, and we talked about what the people on Get Up think that that maybe this was so that if things stay the way that they are, that Alabama would not have to face LSU in the first round, so that you can have the opportunity to get an all SEC final like we had 2 years ago, right? That was 2 years ago. The all SEC final with Tua. He came in off the bench to replace Jalen Hurts. That Clemson and Georgia and Alabama, they all stayed in their spots. Because Oregon lost, Utah went up, Oklahoma went up, Minnesota went up, and Baylor went up. Baylor went up 5 spots. Minnesota went up 2 spots. Oklahoma went up 2 spots. Penn State, who also lost, they went down 2 spots. They're number 10 right now. So yeah, I mean, really, I think you can really just look at you really can just look at those top 9. I really look at it because those are the ones that probably have the best shot. They need some help. They're gonna need some help, right? Because LSU is gonna face Georgia in an SEC championship game. So you know that you need Clemson to have a bad. You need Clemson to either lose against South Carolina. Now South Carolina did beat Georgia, but I'm not sure they're gonna beat Clemson. And then they have to lose in the ACC championship game. And then you would need Michigan to beat Ohio State, or you would need Minnesota, to beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. And so things like that it could happen, it could process, but I also think that you can you shouldn't, be rooting for that. If you're a fan of, Utah, Oklahoma, Minnesota, Baylor, you know, you should be rooting for those things to happen, but you shouldn't get your hopes up, because some things like this don't happen like that. And so I don't know, but it's gonna be very interesting next couple of weeks with this week coming up and then the championship game. So I think we're gonna find out very very soon, um, very very soon actually. That's what's gonna happen with all of this. So good job by this, and I cannot wait for this weekend. So, and actually, I think, to be honest with you, I would like to see some. I would like to see some stuff happen. I would like to see some upsets happen, and I'd like to see what the committee would want to do with these upsets, and how they would, and how the rankings would change. That's really what you really always want to see. I think, until they change how the playoffs is. I think you should always go into um, the last 2 weeks, the rivalry weekend and then the championship weekend. You should always go into those weeks wanting chaos and see how the college football committee um, deals with that chaos. Because I think it could be very, very interesting. So we really, this week in the this past week in the National Football League, um we had a couple of good games. The Saints and Panthers, Saints and Panthers went down to the very last second. The Panthers kicker missed a field goal, very short field goal too, and the Saints drove down the field and they kicked the winning field goal. And then on Thursday night we had a very good game between the Texans and the Colts. I thought that was good, and even in the Packers, the Packers, but the Panthers and the Cowboys were, that was an okay game. Those, I really think the Texans and the Colts and the Saints and the Panthers, they were the only good games. Really, the other games they were either blowouts or they weren't well played games. Like I saw the Seahawks and Eagles, and even though it was 17-9 and one score finish, it wasn't very well played in my eyes. So really, what it came down to, the games of the week were the primetime games. The battle for number one, the 91 Niners against the 82 Packers, and then it was the Monday night game between the Ravens and the Rams. And both games were just blowouts, and it proved several things. It proved that the Niners are totally legit, especially their defense. Totally legit. They shut down Aaron Rodgers and their Green Bay offense. And even some people would say, if you look deep into like analytics, they said maybe they're not as good as their record says they are. But Aaron Rodgers is good as we know it. So they were 8-2 for a reason. Now 8-3. They were 8-2 for a reason. But the 49ers, and they played their tails off, and they were great. Destroying the Packers, getting to 10-1, and then the Ravens. What the Ravens did to the Rams on Monday Night Football was just, and Lamar Jackson. I mean, come on, guys. He had 5 touchdowns and less than 200 yards passing. So, I mean, he is without a question, I think, jumped ahead of Russell Wilson for the MVP. And so, yeah, I think he's very good. I think he's very good. So yeah, I think that was some interesting primetime games. Now, some people would say, is it good to have blowout games in prime time? Maybe, maybe not. But I see it, especially when you have things like that, when you have the 49ers, and the Ravens kind of showing that they are for real. When you have Lamar Jackson putting on his, spot for MVP, and where you have, 49ers proving that they are the best team in the NFC. I think that's, I think something like that is needed. Something like that is needed in a prime time setting. So that was, you know, I had no problems with that. I had no problems with that at all. Coming up on this week, obviously tomorrow's Thanksgiving. By the way, happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. Hope you and yours have a happy and safe Thanksgiving. I know what I am thankful for, and um, yeah, so I know what I am thankful for this week, this year, and forever. Um, but as we break down the Thanksgiving games, the Bears and Lions are coming on in the morning. Um, it's unfortunate. We have the Bears, who are not that great of a team, and the Lions could be starting their third string quarterback, somebody I don't even never even heard of. So that game would just be that game. The Cowboys, who lost to the Patriots, and Jay Jones had some very interesting things to say about the coaching staff. They're facing the 8-3 Bills, a very good team themselves. So we'll see what happens in that game. The Bills have a good defense and an emerging young quarterback in Josh Allen. So um, it'll be good to see what they do on a national stage against the Cowboys. It's good to see, and it was interesting to see if the Cowboys can get back on track. Will they take what Jerry Jones said to heart and come out here and try to prove a point that they are a good team and that they are a Super Bowl caliber team. A lot of people thought they were at the beginning of the season, but over the past 4 or 5 weeks, they have not shown that, especially after what they started with. With throwing the ball over the yard and everything like that they were. So. And then the Sunday night game is the Saints and the Falcons, and that should be that should be a kind of a revenge game, because a couple weeks ago the Falcons went into New Orleans and just demolished the Saints, just demolished them, and embarrassed them, and a lot of people were like, "Wow, really, really?" The Saints not ready for them, so we'll see now if the Saints can go into Atlanta and give them a little taste of the medicine, so to speak. So that will be something to look forward to. And then we've got I think we have some other nice games. We've got the 49ers and the Ravens. How about this? The top team in the NFC against not the top team ranking wise, but a team that a lot of people think is the top team in the AFC, because they beat the Patriots. They're going head to head. The Titans and the Colts, they're fighting, jockeying for a position, for a wild card spot, and also for the division, because the division is still theirs to take. The Raiders and the Chiefs are an interesting game. That's better for the division. Obviously, the Chiefs had the Patrick Mahomes injury they had to deal with, but even with Patrick Mahomes, they lost a couple games with Patrick Mahomes, so they're not the juggernaut that he was last year. But but the Raiders are coming off a embarrassing defeat in New York to the Jets, so that's going to be interesting, I think, to see what happens there. And then the primetime games with Sunday night, the Patriots and the Texans, Deshaun Watson going against Tom Brady. Tom Brady's not been very happy with the offense of late. They haven't been as offensive as he would probably like, but their defense has been incredible. And we'll see if that defense can slow down Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans, who are pretty darn good team themselves. And then we have the Vikings and the Seahawks on Monday Night Football, and it's another primetime game for Kirk Cousins to prove that he is, you know, that he's not the quarterback that people think he is. I think most people think Kirk Cousins is not a good quarterback. And I came up with the thought earlier in the season that maybe Kirk Cousins maybe he's not a winning quarterback. Yeah, maybe he's not a winning quarterback, but he's a good quarterback. Maybe he's just not a winning quarterback. Maybe he doesn't do the things that it takes to win, because obviously he puts up numbers and he makes great throws, and there's a lot of things he does that helps his teams win. Like the game against the Broncos, he even though that first half was terrible, he brought them back and scored on 4 consecutive touchdown drives to help them win the game against the Broncos. So this is another primetime game. The Seahawks are at home. They're not as good at home. The 2 losses have come at home, and the Vikings are an okay road team. So we'll have to see what happens there. But it's going to be a very interesting thing for the Vikings, because they are in the race for not only wild card but the division, especially after the Packers lost. So now the Packers won. They beat the Vikings, so they're still ahead of them. And they have to have one more game to go. But with the Packers are playing the Giants, so this should be an easy win for the Packers. So I think the Vikings need to win to keep up. And they need to keep up with the Packers if they want to win the division. Being 8-3, I think they're on their way to a wild card spot. And actually, when you think about it, when you look at the players, right? You've got the 49ers, you've got the Saints, you've got the Packers, and you've got is it the Eagles and the Cowboys are on top of the NFC East. So actually, the Vikings and Seahawks are the playoffs. They're both the playoff teams right now. So this is also a spot to battle for position for that playoff spot. Because if you don't jump up and win your division, do you want to be the 5 seed or do you want to be the 6 seed? And that could be a better, depending on the matchup, depending on who's like that. Because as of right now, the NFC East would be the 4 seed, because I think the Saints are still. I think that's 8-3 themselves. So. And they would be number 3. So do you want to go to see the Saints, or do you want to go and see the Eagles/Cowboys? Or maybe a better matchup for you. So really, really interesting storylines. Hopefully some great games this week. Oh, and I should mention this. After the debacle that happened on Thursday Night Football a couple weeks ago with the Browns and Steelers, they're playing this week as well. So no Mason Rudolph. I think Marquise Pouncey is still. This is his last game being suspended, and of course Myles Garrett been suspended indefinitely. So yeah, very interesting week coming down in the world of the NFL. All right, so I did not watch NXT Takeover. I did not watch Survivor Series this weekend, unfortunately. Um, so before what I heard, it was maybe some interesting. I watched. I was watching the Wrestle Talk live stream over on their YouTube channel, and I had to watch some of the stuff through them, and I was also trying to catch a online stream from one of the from a website that that was streaming it. I couldn't get a good stream of it, so I couldn't watch it. The Survivor Series, at least I couldn't watch that. You know, because it kept stopping and starting and everything like that. So whatever, but um, seemed like it was a nice weekend of wrestling in Chicago. Nice 4 days of wrestling in Chicago with SmackDown, with some other things as well. The two takeover Survivor Series, then that's this past Monday on Monday Night Raw. So some really good things going on in WWE. So we got a couple other stories to talk about before we end the podcast. This week the NBA, it was there was a announcement made by ESPN that the NBA have have proposed some schedule um, and playoff format changes coming up, and that it would these would start in the 2021-2022 season. This was broken by ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski and Zach Lowe. Um, and some of these things, some of these to me are just they're stupid. They really are. They really are stupid. So, let's see if we can get into these. Get into some of these things. This. Yeah. So, uh, one of the changes would be reducing the schedule. Over the past several years, there's been a lot of things going on with load management. Um, with Kawhi Leonard, it's been taken to an extreme, but over the past years, and this hasn't really started. This may have started maybe even at, 5 or 6 years ago with Greg Popovich. I mean, remember there was a Thursday night game on TNT against the Miami Heat, where the San Antonio Spurs they sat everybody. They sat Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker, all of the stars. He said all of the stars because he wanted to give his players some rest, and they got fined for that. So even it was back then, it was an issue, and that's what I think that's what most people have an issue with. They have an issue with. I think they have an issue with two things. They have an issue with um, players being sat down for national TV spotlight games and also being sat down for road games because you know when you go and visit a team only once, because that was a couple of years ago. Remember, a couple of years ago, that was a thing where the Cleveland Cavaliers sat down LeBron on a game against the Memphis Grizzlies, and that was the only time. And because Memphis is in the West and Cavaliers are in the Eastern Conference, that's the only time those people in Memphis are going to see LeBron James, and they're going to sit him for rest. So there's a lot of things out there. So a big thing is to reduce the season. And I kind of agree. I think that you could reduce the season. I don't I I'm kind of going on with that. I would prefer it stay at 82 games, but if this is going to be the way this is going to be, then I think there should be some type of compromise. And I think what they should do is they should um, come and like, and do it. And I think the best way to do it is 66 games. Now, they're proposing 78 games, and that makes no sense to me. Why would you just cut down 4 games? For what? For what? And it makes no sense. The easiest thing to do is to do 66 games. So what you do, and let's just take my team, my favorite team, the Chicago Bulls, right? So this is how the Bulls schedule would go. They would play the other 25 teams that aren't in their division. They would play the other 25 teams that aren't in their division. They would play those teams twice, once at home and once in a row. That's 50 games. And then the 4 teams in the division, they would play 4 times. That's 16 games. There you have it. That's 60. That's 66 games. And it puts an emphasis on winning your division. Now, to be honest with you, winning, the divisions in basketball don't matter too much because it's the only thing that happens is that if you win your division, you're guaranteed a top 4 spot. That's the only thing that matters. So maybe it matters a little bit, but it really kind of doesn't matter because they choose 18 teams, 8 teams per conference. So, but that's the way I think that makes the most sense. To go 66 games. I don't know how they would do 78 games. So no. So if you go 29 times 2, you play each team once. That's 58. So then you play 20 more games. So then how would that go? Would they just be random games? Or would you play 5 more times would you play 5 more? That doesn't make any sense. So yeah, and there are other things that don't make sense. Like I'm there's no reason why there needs to be a 30-team in-season tournament. Like, this isn't soccer. Soccer is soccer for a reason. Basketball is basketball for a reason. And I'm glad to see that James Harden and PJ Tucker, they were asked about that, and they was like, no. The only tournament I want to play in is the tournament for the NBA Cup, the NBA championship. I don't want to play in another tournament. No, that's stupid, and it is stupid. They're thinking about doing a postseason play-in format where where the teams 7 through 10 would have to play in. I don't like that either. To me, that's dumb. That doesn't bring intrigue to the more to the playoffs. That's ridiculous. And then also, and I really am not a fan of reseeding the 4 conference finalists. I'm really not. I said this before, and actually I've done a video on this, and I should put it if for those of you guys watching on YouTube, I'll put it in like in one of the iCards. Um, for those of y'all on listening to me on my podcast, you can go to my YouTube channel and search it and find out. But I talked about this. I don't I don't want reseeding. Something like that. If you're gonna keep the conferences, then that's what the finals need to be: the Western Conference champion versus the Eastern Conference champion. It doesn't need to be where it's where it's going to be, uh, you know, like if the final 4 teams are the Lakers and the Clippers, and then the other 2 teams are the Raptors and the Bucks, and then you receive them so that you end up with the Bucks and Raptors, or the Clippers and the Lakers. As good as matchups that they might be, and then better matchups that they might be, that's not when you have conference. If you're going to do that, then just get rid of the conferences and say there are 30 teams, there are no conferences. 30 teams, no conferences. And maybe you want to keep the divisions, maybe you don't. I don't know. But but then there's no conferences. There's no reason for there to be conferences. If you so that you can just have a 16-team playoff, then do that. But no reseeding. These are all of these changes, proposed changes, to me, make no sense at all. They make no sense at all, and I'm not for any of them whatsoever. I am signed up to the NBA fan forum. They ask me all these questions. I hope I get an email from them so that I can tell them I don't want to see none of this. Don't do none of this. I think these are absolutely ridiculous. And the final thing we'll talk about this week is the 25 finalists for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2020. They've come out with the 25 finalists. We have the names. Let's go through them and let's talk about them. Steve Atwater, safety for the Denver Broncos. Yeah, he's been a semifinalist 9 times from 2012 to this year. Carl Banks, linebacker for the New York Giants and Redskins, Cleveland Browns as well. Rondé Barber is a finalist. Tony Baselli is a finalist. Isaac Bruce, Leroy Bowler, Alan Faneca, Torrey Holt, Steve Hutchinson, Edgerrin James, John Lynch, who is now the the GM president of the 49ers, Clay Matthews, I'm guessing that's junior. Yeah, I think that's junior. Clay Matthews III is in Los Angeles. Sam Mills, Troy Polamalu, Simeon Rice, Richard Seymour, Steve Tasker, Fred Taylor, Zach Thomas, Hines Ward, Ricky Waters, Reggie Wayne, Patrick Willis, Darren Woodson, and Bryant Young. So here's how it goes. The modern era players will be reduced to 15 finalists that will be announced on January 2nd of 2020. From then, the finalists will be then presented to the full 48 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame Selection Committee during this annual meeting on Selection Saturday on February 1st, the day before the Super Bowl. They will elect 5 modern era players for the class of 2020. they also are going to select they also can select 2 members of the senior committee and contributors and coaches. They can select 2 to 3 of those, I believe, as well. Um, and I've always had a problem with that because I don't understand, because you can select between like you can select no more than 5 players, and I've never been a fan of that. I think that and really the reason why, one of the reasons why I'm bitty about it is because that was such a that was because for years they didn't select players just because I don't know why, and for years you had people where it was just two players going in, 2 players going in when there was more play, and it's a backlog. It's a backlog because really Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt should have been in. You know, and I think Zach Thomas is a Hall of Famer. He should have been in. There's a lot of players who should have been in. I think as I peruse this list, I would say that Leroy Butler, just off the top of my head, Leroy Butler, Hines Ward, Ricky Waters, and Bryant Young are not Hall of Famers. Those are the only people who are not Hall of Famers in my eyes. I think maybe Richard Seymour as well. Maybe you could say Richard Seymour. I would have to look more detail into Bryant Young, look more detail into Ricky Waters, Richard Seymour, Simeon Rice. Uh, I have to look more into that to see. Maybe even Carl Banks too. Maybe I have to look more into them to see. Where they line up, the stats the stats that they get, where they line up on the stats is where they are, like when it comes to all pros and Pro Bowls and things like that. I would have to look deep into those. But first, from off my first glance, Carl Banks, Leroy Butler, Simeon Rice, Richard Seymour, Hines Ward, Ricky Waters, Bryant Young aren't Hall of Famers. They're Hall of very good. And in some cases, Hall of very, very good. But I think everybody else could be Hall of, actually. Oh, excuse me. Actually, as I think about it, even Fred Taylor, maybe Fred Taylor is in a Hall of Famer as well. So yeah. So at first glance, I would I'd have a better um chance. I'll try to remember, and then maybe what I do is that when they do give us the 15 finalists on January 2nd, maybe the next podcast after that, I would have a more. I'll make a more detailed and informed decision on who of those 15 are Hall of Famers, who aren't, and who would be the 5 that I would select as well. So, but yeah, it's some good names this year, including there's some first timers. Troy Polamalu is a first timer. Reggie Wayne and Patrick Willis are first timers. So and then you get some people in there who should um yeah and there are the guys I mentioned: Carl Banks, Fred Taylor, Ricky Waters, and Bryant Young, who who in the past have been eligible for the Hall of Fame, but are semifinalists the first time this year. So all of the other players have been a semifinalists in previous years. But yeah, like I said, once the 15 finalists are named, I'll have more. I'll give you more and give you more thoughts on that, in a more opinionated and fair way. But I think right now this is a very strong list, a very strong list. All right, y'all. Thank you guys so much for listening over on my podcast, and for those of you guys watching on YouTube, thank you guys so much for watching. Um, to be very honest, I've got some very crazy things happening right now in my life. Um, I hope to continue to do these podcasts. We'll see what happens next week with that. Um, but yeah, if so, check out. It will be up here next Wednesday. I don't know if I'll do a video one, but definitely I will do the regular audio one. So make sure that you are that you follow me on Anchor FM or any of the other ones. So make sure that for those of you guys watching on YouTube, you look in the description box. You can see all of the places my YouTube, all of the places that my podcast is at, like on Spotify, on Apple, on iHeart, Google, wherever there's a podcast, wherever podcasts are found, my podcast is there. So make sure you go ahead and you signed up. Also, in the description box is the link to where you can support me. Um, 3 tiers: 99-cent tier, a $4.99 tier, and a $9.99 tier. So if you like what you hear, or in this case, maybe, or for YouTube, if you like what you see, sign up, and you can, because like I'm not doing video uh, uh, things right now. I'm just I did one today just because so that I haven't done a video in a long time, so that you can see my face, you can see in the new place that I'm at. But yeah, for the most part, I'm going to continue to do most of what I'm going to do. I'll do a video every now and then we'll see how it goes down the line. Because this could be the norm where I do both. I do I do the podcast, both like this, in video and audio form. So um, yeah. So make sure that you click the link in the description box and you find that out. And for those of you guys are listening to me again, we're broadcasting from. Make sure that you go to anchorfm.com to get all of those things. I know you may be listening on another platform, but go to anchorfm.com if you want to support me. So yeah, or maybe even like follow me on Twitter. What I probably would do is I'll probably put a link on Twitter today to where you can support me on the podcast. It'll probably be when I promote this podcast, I'll see if I can put a link. If not in that tweet, I will put it in a thread under it so that it'll be in another tweet so that you can see it. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys again so much for watching and for listening. See you. I will see you and talk to you guys next week. Uh, as always, y'all, be good to each other. Y'all, be careful out there. Happy Thanksgiving once again. Love each other, care for each other, and I am out.